My grandparents, who I'm named after my grandfather, Ralph Lewis, he got in the restaurant business in the 1920s. 1933, moved from Tampa, Florida to West Palm Beach, Florida, took over food operation at the Eldorado Hotel in 1933. And my family's been in the restaurant business in Palm Beach County ever since. My grandparents met at the Eldorado Hotel here in West Palm Beach in 1935. They got married and they made a plan and commitment to save their money to work 365 days a year, not take a day off for 10 years, so that they could save the money to buy this property and start this. It took them 12 years because World War II set them back just a little bit. For 12 years, 16 hours a day, they would work in South Florida during the winter. They left here, drove to Connecticut or Maine each summer, worked all summer, loaded up their car. At that time, it took days to make the trip. They would get here, start all over. They bought this piece of property for $1,500. They saved their money and material and physically built this building. This is the original building, the original site, original location. He built it in 1947, and it was so far out of town, believe it or not, at the time, that we couldn't even get deliveries. So I think he said the first 8 years they couldn't get deliveries. So it was nearing the mid-50s before delivery trucks and food vendors would move out here. Everything was cooked on lumpwood charcoal. It was called the Okeechobee Drive-In at the time. Back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, there were a lot of curb hop, full service restaurants you could pull up. So the one thing that people loved about here, you could pull up outside, the staff would come out to your car, bring you a steak and a martini delivered right to your steering wheel. So it was a different time back then. In 1974, my father took over, Curtis Lewis, and he changed the name from Okeechobee Drive-In Restaurant to Okeechobee Steakhouse. And at that point, my father had run the restaurant for many decades, and now at this point, I run the restaurant. I started in the kitchen and started just doing the basic things that you would think, like cleaning, sweeping, washing dishes. Then I slowly moved into prep. I cooked the first steak here when I was around 12 years old over a lumpwood charcoal pit. Almost everything was exclusively cooked over an open charcoal pit. In the mid-70s, when my father remodeled the restaurant, keeping up with the times a little bit to keep relevant, he went to the high heat overhead broilers, and that was in the mid-70s. So fast forward now, we're 48 years later, and that's what we're still cooking with. My passion circled back to the restaurant business, and several years, a decade or two ago, we just decided to really run with it. And we opened our Okeechobee Prime Meat Market, which is here on the property with Okeechobee Steakhouse. We've since opened Lewis Steakhouse in Jupiter, Florida, and Lewis Prime Grill in Loxahatchee. So it keeps us busy, and we have a very, very successful barbecue catering, Okeechobee Prime Barbecue, that we have multiple barbecue trailers. We set up on the weekends at our meat market, Okeechobee Prime Meat Market, and we do a lot of catering. So that's kind of my story, drifting away a little bit, coming back in, and this is where my heart, this is where my passion, I'll be here until the day I die. You've got to have top of the line product. So we source most of our product out of the upper Midwest, Nebraska, Dakotas. We use all prime. We have very, very tight specifications for all of our cuts. We're hands-on, I'm hands-on here all week. The meat comes in, we inspect it. We have a meat aging rooms. We have 2 dry aging rooms. We have a wet aging room. Our head butcher meat cutter's been with us 22 years. He is phenomenal with meat. Our #1 selling steak is a 9-ounce filet mignon. Our #2 selling steak is a 27 to 28 ounce bone-in, dry-aged ribeye, which, by the way, is my go-to steak. The marbling's phenomenal. It cooks up. Don't worry about the size, because the next morning, if you have leftovers, it goes just as good with steak and eggs for breakfast. You know, you're gonna want a napkin, trust me, but you can do away with the napkin, you know, just let it run. We're a classic old school steakhouse. If you like old school classic, we have one of the best, if not the best, classic French onion soup you would ever want to put in your mouth, or put in front of you. For dessert, we have a cheesecake that has been in my family since the 1930s, my grandfather's recipe, or our homemade coconut cream pie. Those are off the chart. The one thing about being in business for so many decades is the point when it becomes surreal that you realize you're the oldest steakhouse in Florida and that you've become an iconic institution. And for us, for my family, I know for myself, my father, my wife, you know, my parents, we're very laid back, kind of modest people. Okeechobee Steakhouse is built on family values, traditions. One thing we push for that is so important to us is the hospitality side, the experience. We don't just sell you a great steak. Come in here, you get an experience. You're gonna leave here feeling like you just met your long lost cousin. We're not a corporate feel, we're family. You're gonna see the same server today that you've seen a year ago. Our general manager, Christina Wishart, she's been with us 29 years.
I started July 1st, 1994. I remember it was a Friday night at the hostess stand, and that's where my career here started. And I was going to school for nursing. My mom was a nurse, my grandmother was a nurse, and so I felt like I had to follow in their footsteps. As I was putting myself through school and working, there was just something about the hospitality business that I just loved, I thrive on. I love being around people, meeting new people, building relationships with guests. Every day is a new venture. It's exciting. I've spent more than half of my life here. The family that I work for treats me like family, treats the staff like family, and our patrons like family. We have watched a lot of our patrons be born here, and now they bring their children here.
We have people that told us their grandparents brought them here 50 years ago, and they have those memories. As anyone would imagine, over going on 76 years now, we've been mentioned in every kind of magazine, paper, and you know, awards, and done shows with so much. But when the Steakhouse Hall of Fame reached out to us, I was literally taken back, because I thought, Hall of Fame, you know you've reached a milestone that you can't buy. You can't call up a Hall of Fame and say, I want to buy my way into it. You have to earn that. That comes with years of being in existence, dedication, and being at the top of the A game. I can tell you, when Steakhouse Hall of Fame reached out to me, and after I had the conversation, and obviously my answer was yes, yes, and yes, I'm so honored. Immediately, I started calling my family. I called my father, I called my wife. You're not gonna believe this. Steakhouse Hall of Fame reached out to us. They also were honored. I wish my grandparents were here. That is the one thing, because I know when my grandfather and my grandmother opened this in October 20th of 1947, they would have never, ever imagined that their grandson would be sitting here 75 or 76 years later and being inducted into the Steakhouse Hall of Fame because of something they sacrificed so much for. So it's an honor that I can't put into words.